Medical science is adding 3 months to our lives every year from 2016 to 2030. But guess what? When we hit 2030, medical science is going to be adding a year to every year we live. This means if you do the math, if you're around 40 right now, you are most likely going to live to be 100. If you are 10 years old, you might well live to be 130. Our mindset and our attitude towards aging really influences how we age. We know that happiness, joy, mindfulness help you live longer. We don't truly know why, but we can see that there's a correlation. Happiness gets a little bit vague. What truly makes us happy? We can go into these deep questions. You could pop a pill that will make you happy. What I believe is really going on is that the correlation is between fulfillment and aging. Fulfillment is a more long-term happiness. Fulfillment comes from having meaning in life, having people around you that you deeply care about and who care about you. But here's the problem. While we can slow down death, we are not able to reverse or stop aging. So it's your choice. Do you want to be 100 and be crippled in a wheelchair with your eyesight fading? Or do you want to live to be 100 with the body of someone who today might be 60? So much of what we believe to be true about our biology is fake. It's ideas that we bought from our parents. You don't have to be obese because your family has a history of obesity. You do not have to live by the common rule that happens to most American males and females, where 1% of your muscles disappear every year past the age of 30. You can be ripped and have a six-pack well into your 80s and 90s with the right practices. The human body is far more resilient a machine than we've been trained to believe. What gives me meaning in life is knowing that if we come together as a species right, we can fundamentally be that generation that changes the way human beings choose to live, choose to consume foods, choose to come together as society, so that the next generation doesn't fall prey to so much of the bullshit and the bad habits that we have taken on by accident. A-Fest is a transformational event put together by my company, Mind Valley. At A-Fest, we bring all of these amazing people together, and then we create these beautiful opportunities for them to connect, to bond, to forge friendships.
Because when you're living from the consciousness,
unique people doing unique things who are in a position where they can help spread enlightened ideas. Because this way, these ideas can go out to so many more people.
Welcome, everybody, to A-Fest Longevity! Why did you come here? Are you looking for connection? Are you looking to learn something specific? Are you wanting to let go? Start something new? See if you're willing to let go of those expectations and instead just hold an intention and be completely open to how it might come to you. So now I get the pleasure of really kicking off A-Fest in earnest, because the man who really has drawn us all together, who's created this amazing community and experience, who's one of our guides in terms of our teachers, but also a role model just as a person. He is the founder of Mind Valley. He is the man, the mastermind behind AFEST, behind Mind Valley University, all the incredible projects he's created with this idea of spreading enlightened ideas on Earth. He wants to touch 1 billion people and really get as much information and education out there to people on the things that matter, to make people healthy and happy. It's a really noble ambition. So to really kick this event off, can you please get up and give a great, rousing welcome for Vishalakhiani.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone. So if you guys can take a seat, I'd love to welcome you to AFEST.
I love you, Vishal.
I love you too, Ashok. I love your sexy Bollywood dance moves. So let's get started. Welcome to Sardinia. This is a really, really, really special place. And it's special because in Sardinia, there's roughly 10 times as many people who live to be 100 as in the United States and in most other developed parts of the world. And scientists have been studying this, and they found that it ranges into a number of things. It has to do with moderate alcohol consumption, lots of walking. It has to do, some people suspect it has to do with goat cheese. But the biggest thing that they find that holds true is community. It has to do with community. And so everyone, the scientists who are studying this whole aspect of Sardinia, it is community. It's the strength of people's social connections that they believe is the #1 thing that's causing people here to live, to be so healthy. And why this is really interesting is because community is really what AFEST is about. When we started AFEST, I was at a conference. It was called Underground, and it was in DC, and it was a conference on entrepreneurship. And you have a lot of these underground entrepreneurs who have built businesses that you've never heard about, hence the name Underground, and they would come on stage and share their wisdom. But what I noticed at that conference, and this was way back in 2010, is that most people would really say that the highlight was not the event room. The highlight was the connections at the bar, the lobby bar. And so it was at Underground that the idea of AFEST was conceived. The first thing that came to me was that it has to be about the evening activities. It has to be about the connection and the networking and the parties. And so instantly that was baked into AFEST. An article just came out based on a scientific study that says loneliness is up 300%. Loneliness is up 300% despite social media. In fact, it's often because of social media that we feel lonelier. How many of you here are CEOs? Raise your hand. If you're CEO of your own business. Well, here's a statistic. 50% of CEOs in America are lonely. They rated themselves as truly feeling lonely, that they don't have enough people in their lives they can connect with. Now, here's the scary part. Science now shows that loneliness is more dangerous to your health and longevity than obesity or smoking. If you state that you're feeling lonely, that is equivalent to having a smoking addiction. It's equivalent to having an obesity problem. So why longevity, right? What many people don't know is that before every AFEST, I typically go into 1 year or more of study on a theme. So longevity was something I was obsessed with when I turned 40. Because when I turned 40, I was in horrible shape. Just to give you an idea, 2 years ago, I'm 42 right now, so I turned 40 about 2 years, 4 months ago. I had an extra 7 kilograms of fat around my waist. 7 kilograms, that's 2 backpacks. So imagine me with 7 kilograms of fat around my waist. If you look at pictures of me or videos of me from 2 years back, I never wear t-shirts, I only wear shirts because it had to be baggy to hide that fat. I would never take off my shirt on a beach. In 2 years, I went through a radical transformation, but it wasn't just losing fat. Other aspects of my life started changing. I found that no longer at 5 p.m. on the spot did I need to eat a Mars bar in the office for that energy spike. All of a sudden, I found that my cognitive ability was through the roof. I had more energy. I was thinking clearer.
My hair stopped falling out. My hair stopped graying. So I have the same level of gray hair now as I did 2 years ago. And that bald patch I was starting to get, weirdly enough, some of the hair started growing back. I no longer have that bald patch. The next thing I thought is, wait, if I can do this to my waistline, if I can do this to my musculature, what about eyesight? The pair of glasses that I have, where did I put my glasses? Could you guys just grab my glasses from my jacket pocket? This is actually my third pair of glasses in the last 4 months. Why? Because my eyesight keeps getting better and better, and so I have to make the lenses thinner and thinner. I've always been known as the meditation guy. I was the guy teaching millions of people around the world how to meditate. Spiritually, consciously, I had that area. But health, no.
That's it. Focus on your chest, focus on your chest.
And so I decided to apply the same focus to health and wellness and exercise and food and nutrition as I did to consciousness engineering. And what happened was, in 2 years, I had remarkable transformations in my body. What is going on there? When I look at that, I realize that we as a human species have a massive bug in how we are functioning as collective society.
It was about 1 year ago today that my friend John, who's a filmmaker, and I were here in Sardinia talking to some of the oldest people on the planet. And you can see some of the amazing people that we spoke with. On the top right there is Giulio. He's 104 years old. He's from Sardinia, one of the most amazing people we met. In the middle is Hideko, who is 97, who at 95 years old was still climbing orange trees before her daughters told her to stop because they were afraid for her health. This journey that we embarked upon, I think we had some preconceptions of what to expect. But there was a lot of things that I think we experienced that we didn't fully grasp until we were there. Michel Poulan is a demographer who, in the year 2000, looked at Sardinia and noticed that there was sort of this oddity, that there was all these centenarians, these people making it to 100 at an amazing rate.
This one, for example, you see Fortunato, he was 101 when he died.
So it's this statistical condition that is an anomaly around the rest of the world. So we have 100-year-olds all around the world, but they're not concentrated like we see in these longevity areas, these blue zones. And so these become a fascinating point of study for us because it suggests that there's something in that culture, something in that environment that is breeding longevity, that is breeding health. And I think more importantly, breeding optimal health or facilitating healthy aging.
One thing that almost all the researchers found in common was that Sardinian society is very community-rooted, right? So people here really value the power of social relationships, of community, of supporting and living together in larger family units.
When we talk about longevity and we look at these people that are 100 years old or 95 years old, we have to understand the historical context to their life. We have to look at what they did in 1930, 1940, and what their life was really like. I mean, I don't know a lot of people, again, 97 years old, tilling up their soil with a hoe, right, getting ready for planting. Community was something that they had to have. This is not an option for them. This wasn't a thing that they understood was beneficial for health, therefore let's go do community. Somebody needs their house fixed, they would come together and fix the house. If the community roads needed fixing or paths, they would all chip in to do this. This was something that they used to come together, to accomplish things, and to build better lives for each other.
The story of man is a story of change. From his earliest beginnings through each successive age, these changes came about slowly through thousands of years. Archaeologists have had to put together that story as it is revealed by the tools, weapons, and other artifacts which prehistoric man left behind.
This is probably one of humanity's greatest achievements of all time. Taking average life expectancy from 18 in the Cro-Magnon area where we were running away from tigers and lions, all the way up to 80 years old and beyond that. We avoided things that killed us early on in our life, right? So better sanitation, better nutrition, reductions in infant mortality, all of those kinds of things, germ theory. That's how the line started going up in the beginning. But the line continues to go up in the second half of the 20th century because of things that we did to avoid death later on in life. Better therapies for heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all of those things that are killing us later on. Back in 1900, there were only 15,000 centenarians in the United States. In 2010, there were 53,000. You can see in this tiny snapshot of time, over 30 years, that it grew by 20K. And by the year 2050, experts are predicting that there'll be over 600,000 centenarians in the United States alone. And that's based on today's technology. And what do we know about today's technology? Technology does not say static. It's dynamic. It's always changing and it's improving. So what if we could roughly double our life expectancy and live to 150 years old in a healthy state? Not in a decrepit state, but in a healthy state. How does that change the world? We get wealthier as we live longer and healthier lives. I'll just zoom in here. Gains in life expectancy over the last century are worth over 1.2 million per person to the current population in the United States. Scholars have known for a long time that if you're wealthy, it's easy to be healthy. But they didn't spend very much time thinking about the opposite. If you're healthy, then maybe that leads to wealth. If you're healthy, then you can work. If you're healthy, you can be productive. If you're healthy, you can come up with new ideas. And that not only is good for the individual, but it's good for the entire society. If you can live longer, then you're more willing to put in time to get educated because you have more time to benefit from that education after the fact. When you dig into the research and you talk to scholars who study innovation and who've spent a lot of time actually looking at the data, it turns out that innovation peaks around 40. But then after 40, it starts to go downhill. And nobody's really tried to explain that, other than, people just get old. So, what if people stayed healthier for longer periods of time? And instead of worrying about their health after 40, they could just keep thinking about ideas and interesting new things, right? Would innovation extend? Probably.
My father turned 70, and a doctor told him, Mohan, that's his name, if you don't do something about your health, because your muscles are degrading so rapidly, I don't know if you'll live to be 75. Now, I love my dad, and I damn well want to make sure he lives a long life. And so I started going into longevity studies so that I could also help my father.
We know through science that after the age of 30, whether you're a male or a female, you're losing 1% of your musculature every single year. And we accept that as normal. The leading cause of death for Americans 70 and older is not cancer. It's not heart disease. The leading cause of accidental death for Americans 70 years and older, according to CBS News, is falling down. It's because their musculature has become so degraded, so weak, they fall and they break something. And I didn't want that happening to my father, right? So how could I get my father's musculature back to healthy levels for a 70-year-old man? Now, when he first started doing this exercise, we calculated his 1 rep max. Now, let me tell you the numbers, okay? I can do 140 pounds. That's my 1 rep max for the leg press. My father could do 80. And he was telling me, Vishen, I'm twice your age and I can lift half as much. This feels so bad. 4 weeks later, after going through the 10X protocol, this is what happened to my dad.
This would be the same weight as Vishen. Let's do it.
So he's attempting to do 140. The same weight as me, 42 years old. That's my dad's sexiest gym shirt. Now what he's doing there is a little bit of creative visualization. That's why he's breathing and closing his eyes.
Push, 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 push. 140.
And he does it. But now, Dad just starts showing off. He does it a second time. And then, he does it. He frickin' does it a third time. He beats me.
Amazing. How's
So I started my own research lab in Mind Valley. We brought in incredible researchers, brilliant minds, and we tried to answer the question, what is the best exercise routine to truly develop high musculature? Because we know musculature has one of the highest correlations with longevity. We developed a program called 10X, and what we were able to do is in 30 minutes a week, in 4 months, create 25% strength gain in people under 30, 50% strength gain in people in their 40s, and in the case of my father who's in his 70s, 68% strength gain. That, mind you, is in 30 minutes a week. Now, when I applied 10X to my own body, remarkable things happened. My chest grew, my waist shrank, my biceps transformed. All of this because I was now applying the right exercise.
So a key component of 10X is that you are going to be working out with really heavy weights, okay? So before you start the protocol, you go to the gym and we calculate what is called your 1 rep max. Everyone say that with me, 1 rep max.
Now this was completely counterintuitive to what you learn from a gym instructor, right? But this is what science is saying worked. Specifically, it was a method called the super slow method. All of a sudden, I hit 42 and I have a better body than I had when I was 21.
Hello, this is Paul Jack. Welcome back to my video blog. Today I'd like to talk to you about...
I've had a chance to hang out with a lot of really fit older people. And one of the things that I've found with a lot of these guys is that consistency trumps variety. Consistency trumps variety. It allows them to maintain fitness without actually getting injured, without throwing too many things at their body. I used to think that the best workout, and I've said this from stage before, is whatever workout you're not doing at the moment. So you're always moving on to something new that confuses your body. But as I've gotten older and I've observed some of these older people who are very fit, they're doing the same things over and over again, right? That's the beauty of something like the 10X workout, is it's the same reliable thing, whether you're sleep deprived or whether you're demotivated to train or whether you're at risk for injury, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing, and your body gets used to that, and there can be some benefit to that.
First, I'm going to keep the weight close to my body to get up on the stone.
This is Paul Check's backyard where he stacks rocks each morning. That's his workout, is he stacks rocks each morning. By staying consistent and having a tried and true routine, it allows you to actually maintain your fitness year-round.
I spent the better part of the past 2 decades competing in the most masochistic sports on the face of the planet, subjecting my body to Ironman triathlons and Spartan races and training with the Navy SEALs. And because of that, even though I looked really good in spandex and I could ride a bicycle really fast and don a Speedo, when I really got into testing my internal biology, my biomarkers, my blood, I realized that it's not the same to be fit on the inside as it is to be fit on the outside. And in fact, my passion for fitness and exercising, it was just creating a complete firestorm of inflammation and in fact decreasing longevity. I recently became one of the first people in the world to undergo a full body stem cell makeover in which my bone marrow, literally the bone broth for my whole body, was extracted from my hips, and I went under sedation, and that was blended with something called exosomes, which are derived from placental cells, and then re-injected into every joint of my body to fill me up with stem cells, based on the stem cell theory of aging, that as you age, you lose your viable population of stem cells, and having more bioavailable to you is going to enhance your lifespan. That's one example of a measure that I've gone to that goes just a bit beyond, say, getting a little bit of sunlight every day. It's kind of the wild, wild west when it comes to testing whether or not your efforts to live a long time are actually working. Telomeres are, of course, familiar to most people by now as those caps on the ends of our DNA that keep the DNA from unraveling too quickly, and an increased rate of telomere shortening would be indicative of accelerated aging. You can test how quickly those telomeres are shortening. When I first tested, my chronological age was 34. My biological age was 37.
You guys have all heard a lot of talk at this meeting about the difference between chronologic age and biologic age. Well, your biologic age is largely dictated by the function of your stem cells. Your body's constantly renewing itself. It's constantly regenerating itself. The way that it regenerates itself is your own stem cells. By potentially augmenting your body's ability to use your own stem cells through moving them around, through possible culture expansion, and especially through the use of exosomes, which is the way to rejuvenate your own stem cells' ability to function, is really, I think, quite fascinating. And what exosomes are is it's a lab that takes placental-derived stem cells, they culture expand them, so now you have hundreds of millions of them. You then put them in a stressful culture medium to trick them into thinking that their host is undergoing duress, and they sprout these vesicles filled with growth factors, which are in fact the active ingredient of stem cells. This lab then destroys the placental stem cells and just harvests the exosomes. So you're getting the active ingredient of the stem cells, of the culture expanded stem cells, without the other person's genetic material. So we supplement the person's own bone marrow stem cells with these exosomes, and then we inject effectively all the major musculoskeletal structures. The base of the skull to the tailbone, every level, both sides, the entire spine. Turn them over, both shoulders, both elbows, both wrists and hands, both hips, both knees, both ankles, feet. It is the most comprehensive stem cell treatment ever conceived.
The two biggest changes that I made for the next step in reversing aging really was stem cells, and also real focus on the absence of inflammation. Meaning I began to value less and less going out and doing the long Spartan race or the Ironman triathlon, and started to just do short, intense workouts and then just engage in that low-level physical activity all day long. And those two variables dropped my biological age to 20 at a chronological age of 37. This was several months ago. And I will be retesting after this full-body stem cell makeover to see what kind of an impact that had. And I'll keep my fingers crossed that my biological age is not now 87 or something like that. But ultimately, I feel amazing, so I can't wait to see what the results are from that.
And Muhammad Ali does this beautiful thing where he'd say, look, I want you to imagine that this is your life. How much of it have you lived already? So that's what's left. And then how much of that are you going to sleep? About a third. And then how much of that are you going to work? About half of what's left. And then how much of that time are you going to spend filling out tax returns? Waiting in the dentist's office, sitting in the dentist's chair, getting a haircut, gossiping, wasting time, shopping for irrelevant things. So how much life do you really have left? It's fleeting.
Johnny, like all little boys, he had a good self who told him the right things to do. But like most little boys, Johnny also had a bad self. And I don't know why, but Johnny seemed to prefer to listen to this bad self.
I want you to imagine that you have two personalities, kind of like the angel and devil, but one is a petulant teenager.
My aim is to enjoy life, honey. Don't spoil it by talking about homework.
And the other one is the sage.
Well, listen to this, young man. Considering your last report card, you're staying in every night for a week and study, starting tonight.
So, when you're making a decision about how to live your life, which one of those two is making the decision for you?
You know we want you to go to college next year. You just don't seem to care.
Why do we choose stuff that we know is not good for us? Why do we choose to not do the stuff that we know is good for us? Why? Why do we do that? Because the petulant teenager in a moment has a bit of a meltdown.
And there'll be no allowance.
Steve, your breakfast.
And so I want you to think about that voice. I want you to think about, like, what drives you when you're faced with some food or you're faced with exercise. Like, how many people in here have procrastinated exercise a little more often than maybe they should? Anybody? Yeah, that's the teenager.
Nobody's going to give me that stuff.
That's the teenager, because the sage would say to you, you know what?
Nobody but yourself to blame.
I want you to think a little bit about who's in control of the decision, the teenager or the sage. You'll hear the voice. It kind of goes like this. Imagine with food. But you're in Italy. And what we do is we quiet down the sage. The sage is like, yes, and you have to live in this body.
When you see somebody walking down the street and they're morbidly obese or they're just a little bit obese, it is not their fault. It's not that they were lazy, it's not that they were greedy, it's that the food industry is a profit-driven industry that is happy to get their profits at the cost of our health. Most of the food decisions that people make are unconscious. Most of the food decisions that people make are bought and paid for. You know, there are certain soft drink companies, for example, that have at this point spent, say, millions and millions of dollars linking their product to happiness. And we are subject to that. You might remember Dr. Spock, not the pointy-eared one, the pediatrician, and he did this big about face. He said, no, we should not be giving dairy milk to our babies and so on. And of course, that caused quite a bit of a backlash. You remember 20 years ago, everybody believed milk was healthy. These days, it's a little different.
Milk is about the most perfect food there is. A glassful at every meal is good for you, and with one more, that makes a quart a day.
A colleague of his, a guy who regarded him or claimed to be a friend of his, came out and suggested that maybe he was senile and that he was wrong and he may be senile. And then the interviewer, I saw this, I couldn't believe it. The interviewer says to him, well, what about vegetables? And Dr. Spock is saying we should eat fruits and vegetables. What about that?
Will you have some peas, Ralph?
Gosh, Mrs. Scott, I don't like peas.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, how about a baked potato then?
And the guy goes, I hate that stuff. Just eat it. Just get some vitamins. And I mean, that he could be a doctor is heartbreaking to me, that he could say that.
Now, nutrients are divided in my small world of this into two categories: energy-based nutrients and building blocks. And the challenge for most of us is that we eat non-nutrient foods. In other words, we eat energy-only foods.
Kenneth has the most energy in class. Butter and fortified margarine have vitamin A in them, which is necessary to good health.
Lots of calories in it. That's all you're getting. You're just getting energy. So if you look around the Western world, what you'll see is the weirdest dichotomy of people are dying because they are overfed energy and underfed nutrients. The next time you're sitting there looking at this food and you go, this is non-functional food, the sage is going to be the one to say,
enough is enough.
And I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm saying it's not the decision you make in a given moment that affects your longevity. It's the decisions you make every single day cumulatively. There's a significant amount of freedom on the other side of a promise. Freedom from the food industry, freedom from the pharmaceutical industry, freedom to live a healthy life, freedom.
Study on these nuns. I call them super nuns. It was actually on the cover of Time magazine. They wanted to find out how these nuns were living into their later years, 80, 90, and above. They found out, the research said, that half of it had to do with their gratitude, their emotional faith, but the other half had to do, they were dedicated, lifelong learners. They learned every single day. They were reading, having deep conversations, and because of it, it added years to their life. But not only that, it added life to their years also. My name is Jim Quick of Quick Learning, and I help people to learn quickly. My last name really is Quick. I didn't change it to do what I do. You could say my life, my destiny was pretty much planned out, teaching people how to learn faster, which I think is the most important skill in the 21st century.
Knowledge is not power. It's only what? Potential power. It only becomes power when we what? When we use it and we utilize it. So I'm going to go through the 10 keys for unlocking your super brain. 1/3 of your memory is predetermined by genetics and biology.
But 2/3 is in your control. 2/3. So your brain could grow older, but in a lot of ways, it actually could grow better.
So the first one is a good brain diet. Good brain diet. So we're talking about avocados, we're talking about blueberries, or what I call brain berries, right? We're talking about broccoli, we're talking about eggs, if that's allowed by your diet. We're talking about coconut oil or olive oil. We're talking about green leafy dark vegetables, wild salmon, if that's part of your diet as well. Turmeric, I do every morning, I do like an almond turmeric like tea, right? All these things are neuroprotective.
Number 2 is killing ants. Killing ants are actually clinically proven to be neuroprotective, good for your brain. You're thinking, Jim, I don't want to kill ants. ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts.
Do your thoughts make a difference, yes or yes? If I say constantly, I'm getting too old, is that going to be self-fulfilling, yes or yes? If I say I'm forgetful, I have a bad memory, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. Number 3, exercise. And really what we're talking about here is movement. The number one function of your brain is to control your movement. Using your body in different ways stimulates neurogenesis, it stimulates neuroplasticity, it stimulates brain-derived nootropic factors, which is the fertilizer for making new connections. So you have to move.
How do you incorporate movement every single day? Because we live in a very sedentary life. They say that sitting is the new smoking. Number 4 are brain nutrients. Brain nutrients. And what do I mean by that? There are certain nutrients that if you're deficient on, you're not going to be able to think clearly. It's going to affect your focus. It's going to affect your memory. We're talking about the B vitamins. We're talking about the omega-3s, the DHAs, because we live in a very fast lifestyle, right? Everybody's traveling, everyone's very busy. Maybe they can't have a whole foods meal. So supplementing in certain key ingredients for the brain can be very important.
Number 5, positive peer group. So rate yourself 0 to 10. How inspired, encouraged, challenged, energized are you by your peer group?
Research is saying it's not just your biological networks or your neurological networks when it comes to your brain health, but it's also your social networks. Because who you spend time with is who you become.
Number 6, clean environment. How clean is your environment? How organized is 0 to 10?
Research shows that your external world is a reflection of your internal world. And you know this because if you clean your office or you clean your home, you clean your desktop, don't you feel like there's clarity of thought also, that you have better focus? Number 7, this is a big one, sleep. Sleep. If you want to keep an ageless mind, you want to have optimal brain health as you age, you need to get proper rest and sleep for a number of reasons. Number 1,
it's where you consolidate short to long-term memory. That's where you actually remember. You do not, even when you're doing these workouts, build your muscles when you're working out. You build it when you rest. Same thing with your mental muscles, same thing with your memory. The other reason why you sleep is it cleans plaque out that could lead to dementia and potentially brain aging challenges. 8, brain protection. Are you protecting your brain? And I'm not just talking about wearing a helmet in extreme sports, but I mean like things like EMFs, electromagnetic fields. And you know, I read recently that over 90% of kids sleep with their phones underneath their pillows. Is that affecting the brain, you think? Do you think it's normal? Do you think we evolved or were born to be able to handle all the electricity that's coming out of these smart devices?
Number 9, one of the keys to keeping your brain youthful is new learnings, committing yourself to lifelong learning.
Most people, as we grow older, and I mean chronological age, we shut down because we feel like we know everything, right? So there's no novelty that's there. There's a Rumi quote that said, sell your cleverness for bewilderment. Like, when's the last time you felt bewildered? Remember, you don't have creativity or have focus or have a memory or have bewilderment or have love or have motivation or have energy. You do those things. Finally, the last thing, number 10, stress management. And this is the invisible one, right? Nobody wants to talk about. How many people didn't realize how much stress they were under until they were like hanging out here on the beach? Because it's like fish, they don't see the water because it's there all the time.
But we live in a world full of stress, right? From technology, from responsibilities with our career, in our environment, emotional stress and such. But these big floods of cortisol and adrenaline, it's good for fight or flight. It's not good for your brain if you need to take a test, if you need to give a presentation at work, if you need to be able to remember where you parked the car, for example. So you want to be able to manage your stress. So those are the 10 keys for really supercharging your brain to keep it ageless as we grow older.
I remember coming home from a wonderful honeymoon. We were so fortunate. In our 2 years of courting and engagement, we had come to know a lot about each other. And we had learned to love each other in a way that stood the test of, well, 2 years' time anyway.
Comedian Margaret Cho once said, "My boyfriend and I live together, which means we don't have sex. Ever. Now that the milk is free, we've both become lactose intolerant." In trying to keep our heads above water between our jobs and our travel and our kids and our lice epidemics, we had forgotten about each other. As so often happens in these situations, our sex life had kind of slowly and just insidiously disintegrated. Just like exercise and nutrition and stress management, an active sex life is one of the main pillars of health that leads to longevity. We all know that we feel closest to our partners in the minutes and hours and days after having sex.
I feel so comfortable with you.
And we know that couples that have regular sex
tend to be happier and tend to stay together longer.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if time would stand still?
The thing is, it's actually so much more than just that. There's a big study in men that showed that men who had sex twice a week versus men who had sex once a month, they had a 50% lower death rate over a 10-year period. They died half as often. I'm doing some math for you guys. And there could be several reasons for this, of course, right? Sex means intimacy.
The partnership flourished.
Sex is exercise, with occasional high-intensity interval training in between, depending on how you're doing it, maybe. Sex is a great way to relieve stress, also important for longevity. What you may not know is that sex is also great for your immune system. It helps you fight infections. It decreases your risk of depression. It helps you sleep better. It decreases pain. It decreases blood pressure. So this sounds pretty good, right? More sex, longer lives, closer relationships, better immunity. Sign me up, right? The problem is that a lot of people out there have sexual dysfunction. Men, after the age of 40% of men start having some form of erectile dysfunction. That number goes up 10% per decade. So, 60-year-old man, 60% of them have some amount of erectile dysfunction. For women, it's about 40% of women have some form of sexual dysfunction at some point in their lives, and that gets worse with age as well. So these are things that we know it happens, and right now we just kind of accept as a normal part of aging, that you're become less sexually active, less interested, and such. But I think that it doesn't have to be like that. If patients are interested in maintaining their sexual health, then I think that we're learning so much about the way that these organs work and the way that our regenerative therapies work that we can actually start to sort of shift into giving them back years of sexual health. So in regenerative medicine, what we're trying to do is kickstart our body's stem cells into starting to regenerate tissue again. So we can use stem cells in sexual medicine just like we can for musculoskeletal medicine. In men, we have what's called the priapus shot, or P shot. All the men are like cringing right now, where we inject PRP into the penis. In women, we have the O shot. Isn't she fabulous? I just love this picture for some reason. Or the orgasm shot, it's also called, where we inject PRP into the vagina and clitoris. We do numb these areas up first with some topical numbing cream, so it is not as bad as it sounds. With both of these procedures, we can see things like increased blood flow, improvement in sensation, heightened pleasure, stronger orgasms. And then we can also add things to the PRP to make them even more effective. So we can add stem cells, whether from the patient or from other sources. We can add growth factors. We can add exosomes. With all of these stem cell and regenerative therapies, we find that we can get improvement in your sexual experience, whether or not you had dysfunction in the first place.
Our marriage had its ups and downs. They all do. But I guess we had worked out pretty good adjustments on affections and our sex life, and decisions and our money matters.
Sexual health is not a luxury, and sex doesn't just feel good. It's one of the main pillars of health that supports us in this quest for longevity. And I gotta say, of all the things that I can do to make myself live longer, I will take sex over spinach any day. Thank you.
Last time I went proper hunting with the Bushmen. I went out to go visit with the Bushmen again. I've done a number of visits with them, and I got up one morning, and the chief and I have become quite good friends, and he says to me, "Do you want to go hunting?" And of course, I'm like, "Yeah, let's go hunting." "I'm ready, let's go." And we head out, and we're running along, and we're tracking, and we're climbing up cliffs, and we're descending down cliffs, and we're ducking under trees, and thorns are treading our legs, and it's among the hardest miles I've ever done in my life. And we did 27 of them. The chief and I have quite a fun little friendship, like I asked him one day, I had sent out questions to the whole world and said, "What would you like me to ask the Bushmen?" Tony Robbins wrote back to me and he said, "I want you to ask them about the purpose of life and what happens when you die." So I said to the Bushmen, I said, what's the purpose of life? And he says, "To be the best version of you that you could possibly be." I'm like, "Where's your online program, dude?" I said, "Could you tell me more about that?" And he goes, "Well, look, you're a city guy." And he goes, "And I'm a Bushman." He goes, "So I need to be the best Bushman that I can be, and you need to be the best city guy you can be." And I'm like, "Okay." And I go, "But now I'm a city guy visiting you here in the bush." And he goes, well, then you should be the best city guy visiting a bushman here. Like, he's explaining it to me like I'm 12, right? And then I go, okay, but what if I, as a city guy, decided to like just abandon my life and come and be a bushman? He goes, well, then you should then just be the very best bushman you could be. And then I go, okay, well, Tony Robbins wants to know what happens when you die. And he goes, we move the camp. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, we move the camp. And I go, why? And he goes, well, because you're dead and you're going to start stinking. I'm not sure you understood the question. What I want to know is what happens to me when I die. And he goes, we move the village. And I go, okay, no, but me, like me. And he goes, you stay behind. I was like, okay. I go, no, but me, like the me that's not my body. And he goes, there is no me that's not your body. He said, you're here to live this life. And I really like the idea of that. I don't like the idea that we give up our life for some imagined future. Maybe there is one. Maybe we get to reincarnate. Maybe we have another life. That's all fantastic. But I'm thinking that there are a lot of people who have traded their present day existence for this imaginary future, and I want to stop doing that.
Here's a quote that was told to me from my friend, Mickey Hart. He said, longevity is about living in the now, in the moment. So Mickey Hart is the drummer from this band, the Grateful Dead. Legendary band, been around for 50 years. But then it gets much more interesting than that. And he tells me about something called nunstans. Does anyone here know what nunstans is? Okay, imagine existing for eternity. Watching all of history play out forever. That's not nunstans. Nunstans is essentially the opposite of that. It's the idea of experiencing all of time in a single moment that lasts forever. It is the eternal now. And I have to say, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of being on stage and watching this 74-year-old ecstatically play drums to a rapturous audience of thousands. That is living in the now. That is longevity, right there.
This idea of longevity is not a solo act. It's this idea of interbeing with other humans, with the planet, with other organisms. We have to bring this idea, this awareness to a greater state and incorporate all life around us.
Meaning, fulfillment, finding our passion, living our purpose, making a difference in the life of others, creating impact. That's really going to create longevity.
We as a society have to figure out what to do with our extra years of life. And relationships is a very painful place because we haven't figured out relationships even in the context of us living until 70. If we stick to the same old models, that means that we marry at 30 and we have to live until 100, 70 years together. We have to start talking about that because longevity means that a lot of things about how we live have to start changing.
Why I do AFES, why I do Mindvalley, why we have our Quest learning platform is because we want to get this in every school, in every company around the world. We want to ensure that companies are encouraging their employees to eat and live healthy, that schools are teaching children and teenagers what to eat. That's what we have to disrupt if we want to ensure that the next generation of human beings are healthier and are living their best lives.